So we talked a lot about the safe and all that good stuff, but let's move on now finally to making it the actual chain itself, because this is, after all, a chains lesson. So let's make a geometry node, call it link, make it green again, because there's only going to be one link, and we're just going to copy it. We're going to instance it to a lot of other stuff later. So drop down a grid SOP with the knowledge that we're going to build up a link so that it's simulation friendly. That's a big part of this lesson, of course, is making things actually simulate well. So I'm going to align my camera so that the Z is going left and right, because when we instance things later onto points, the normal / velocity direction of the point will basically be the Z direction. So again, I'm going to make the link so that it's long along the Z axis. So drop down the rows to 2 and 2, so it's just a literal square. I'm actually going to turn this camera off over here. I don't want to see that while I'm doing all this. Cool. Another thing is we basically want this to be a unit link. That way we can arbitrarily decide, how big it is later when we're instancing it, small chains, big chains. But let's start with it so that it's at least 1 unit in the Z direction, which is the long direction. So being a chain, it should not be the same. It's not a circular link. It's going to be like a horizontal looking link. So I'm going to do this looks good. 0.7 by 1 seems good. Now let's make a poly bevel. Let's type bevel. There we go. Make sure that it is set to points here. That way it's going to work on all of the points that it found. And I'm going to say, whatever the X is here, the 0.7 in this case, paste that here, paste relative references, but divide it by 3. That way we have, and take the divisions down to 1. So now you can see we have essentially these 3 equal divisions here. So now it's starting to kind of look like a link. So now we want to hollow out the center of it. So this we can kind of just feel around on. I'm going to say play with the inset here until it looks like something that looks nice. So this looks all right to me, which turned to be 0.16. Go S4 to go into select primitive mode. Just click the one in the middle, delete it. It should always be primitive 0 because it's the newest primitive we just made with the poly extrude. But that's fine. So that's gone. What else do we want to do? We want to actually extrude it up again. And the distance we want to extrude it up is going to be the same as the distance that we brought it in. Because we essentially want it to be a round thing of the same depth. So put this one in distance here, paste relative references. And you can see now it's the same width as it is high. Now we don't have a bottom, so put a output back on that. There it is. Now the problem with this is going to be when we bring this in the bullet, as you know by now, it's going to make a convex hull around the entire thing, which is going to fill up the inside hull. So instead, we want to have one link be composed of many smaller chunks. These chunks that you can already kind of see here should be those chunks. So what we're going to do here is after our blast, before we extrude up, drop down a edge cusp. And what edge cusp will do, it will break these polygons apart. Meaning, if I look back here and I select S4 to select one of these, and I press T to move it, you'll see it's attached. But if I do that here, S4, click that, missed it. It's no longer attached. And that's what we want. Now, when we do the poly extrude, and if we don't look at the back, you'll see now we actually have these walls in here. So this is not one piece. In fact, if I put an exploded view here, you'll see it is in fact a bunch of these things. And these are all convex. So every link will be made up of these 8 different chunks. And they'll each have their own convex hull, which will make a nice shape without having to resort to a concave hull, which simply won't work. Wonderful. So that's almost it. We just need to now make sure that it's centered on the origin so that when we actually instance this thing, and you'll notice it's not, it's floating above. So let's just say whatever the centroid is, just move it the reverse of that. So that's what this CEX, CEY, and I'm doing negative here, CEZ, to move it, well, it doesn't show up here, but anyway, obviously it moved it here. Is now, it was here, and it's moved down here. So now it's on at the centroid. So that's what we need to do, pack it, because we'll need to simulate with it, and this will let us instance it, as we talked about extensively in Rigids 2, and then make a null to say that this is our LQ out for now, because we will be making a high-res one later on. And there it is.